When feels like calm and wind stands still, run home, run home. As the crows make night of the fading sun, hide now, hide now. The cheeks do bow as if they weep. Stay down, stay down. Though its light beckons forth, a melody calls out. Too late, too late.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the CC Zone, Season 1, Episode 2. And I'm joined today by Brankles and Elsa. And how are you guys doing today?
Doing pretty good.
That's
It's a
good.
warm day here in Fargo.
I'm doing well. I'm really glad to be able to fill in. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, no problem. So this week we're going to keep it short, nice and simple. We're going to talk about the state of the CCS, and we're going to recap. We're going to start with, the recap of the PGO and Oblivion esports game. So what do you guys think about that game?
Well, I had the opportunity to cast it, and I guess I had a lot of fun. It was a 2-0. That is what I predicted on the analyst desk. So glad that I finally got one prediction right. So, shout out to myself for that. But I think what was interesting to me is that Oblivion. I questioned whether Oblivion's win in the previous week against Heart and Soul was kind of a one-off, whether it was kind of a fluke that they were able to compete with the higher level teams. And honestly, that did come a little bit to fruition in this game. We saw PGO, they had some sloppy moments. It wasn't like, just a straight stomp where they did everything perfect, but they certainly had control from start to finish. So I was a little bit disappointed in what I saw from Oblivion, to be completely honest.
And to piggyback off of what Elsa said is that, we're, as you said, like, was it kind of a one-off with TA Heart and Soul? Well, now that what we're seeing from TA Heart and Soul, it's kind of makes that win not feel as special. But also on top of it, I feel like PGO is starting to find their stride. They are firing on all cylinders. I mean, Hiccup, you could really appreciate the fact that they pulled out the Amumu jungle and
Oh yeah.
stomped with that. I mean, 8-2-13. I just feel like PGO is starting to hit that stride of like, hey, we're finding the chemistry, the synergy that we need. Whereas some of these other teams are still trying to find out themselves. PGO is hitting that stride heading into playoffs.
Yeah, and I definitely agree with you. I think that this is a huge win for them. I think that this boosts their confidence to another level, and I honestly think that they're the team to beat when we're going into playoffs and sitting here. I know that Lost Chapter hasn't had the chance to play against them at this stride at this level, so I think it'll be an interesting battle to see what happens, and it's going to be interesting to see who secures that second um, that bye coming into that second seed. So, yeah. Talking about the game really quick. I do think that Oblivion's. I don't really agree that the Oblivions was or esports win against Heart and Soul was a fluke necessarily, just because Heart and Soul ended up losing this week. But I will say that they did put up a good early game fight. It was definitely a great competition to watch Mr. Turk play against Huff Zone in the top lane. It was definitely a lot riding on that. I don't know if he's out of the Discord yet, but you know, he did talk about it. But yeah, what do you guys think about that game overall?
Yeah, I think that kind of to add on to what Brankles was saying, what's super important when you're looking at going into this playoff race is being able to hit your stride, as you mentioned, at the right time. And we're really seeing that from PGO now. We have seen a little bit of inconsistency from this squad. They did lose to Coin Flip Gaming earlier in the split, but they're the only team to have beaten Collective Effort. And they did lose to Lost Chapter, but kind of being able to have those really high level wins, it shows that maybe they're one of the teams with a higher ceiling. And on top of that, another thing that I wanted to touch on when we're talking about, kind of this friendly competition, this banter between like Huff Zone and Mr. Turk. It's being able to step up in those moments where there's kind of the most pressure on you. So like we saw that really Huffzone was able to feed off of that, and probably the rest of the squad too, right? Like feeding off his enthusiasm. So, some people kind of crumble under the pressure, some strive under the pressure, and we saw Huffzone strive in those situations. And that's going to be super important when you're moving into these playoff matches where PGO is going to have, really strong matchups in every single lane. Being able to have that confidence and being able to rise to the occasion and rise to that challenge, that's what I think is it's gonna take to come over the top of a Lost Chapter, to come over the top of Collective Effort once again. And so I would agree with the analysis that PGO is really the team to beat, in that they seem like they could take on anybody right now, right? So, again, we have seen some inconsistency, but I know that they've gone through a little bit of change with like having a coach, not having a coach. So hopefully they've kind of worked that out. I know they might have another coach member to their coaching staff coming in soon. So we'll see how that works out for them. But yeah, I feel like if you're this team right now, you feel confident in yourself, and that seems to be the most important factor for them so far.
Especially going into playoffs, for sure. I think that's huge.
And to add on to that, I mean, with Huff Zone, it's that, as you were saying, there's the friendly banter they're having, but it's also looking at this team of knowing that they are surrounding their guy. Whole Grain Man stepped up his game tremendously in that match, especially playing Annie. He just really stepped it up to accommodate what was going on, because everyone was focusing on that top lane. I mean, Mr. Turk and Huffzone were having this banter. Everyone's like, "Oh, this is what's going on," and it's almost like Whole Grain Man found those openings. He didn't have to. It wasn't like a, "Hey, we have to ride on Huffzone's coattails to get through this matchup, this series." Whole Grain Man said, "I can do this," and you start to look through the rest of the roster. It's those points where you're like, "Oh, I can do this to have our team win, and win comfortably, and feel like we can do this." Because, like you said, when you face the top teams, it's not necessarily who's the star players. Because if you take off the summoners' names, it's about what you do with the synergy. When you look at the Collective, or you look at Lost Chapter, it's not necessarily a star player that fuels them, it's the star chemistry they have. They know what they need to do around a Baron fight. They know what they need to do around these team fights to pick off the back line or to devastate the front line. And I feel like PGO is starting to finally click with that. They're starting to get to a point where they're going to probably make some noise in the playoffs. Now, when the playoffs happen, anything can go. I mean, we've seen that across all leagues. Anything can happen in the playoffs. But I feel like if PGO really wants to have a shot at winning this whole thing, they need to continue having these moments, having other players step up. Because you can trust that, as you said, there is a little bit of inconsistencies they've had. But if they can trust one another, I feel like they have a shot.
Yeah, for sure. I definitely feel that. I think that I think personally, I think they're one of the favorites right now. But that's in my opinion, of course. Everyone has their own opinions. But I'm really excited to see this team play, especially going into the next round, or rather the playoffs. So, and even this week. So that goes to the player of the week. We did already mention it, and my player of the week, and I know Lindor's player of the week also is Whole Grain Man. Do you guys agree? How are we looking?
Go for it.
Yeah, I like the pick of Whole Grain Man, but I mean, there was someone that played Ashe this past week that, out of Lost Chapter, Drepapine. I think I said that correctly. I feel like he had a great series playing as Ashe. Now I understand Heart and Soul was having some issues, but I don't know. You go back-to-back games of having double-digit kills is pretty sweet.
Yeah, I mean, I think that Whole Grain Man is definitely a good pick. We already talked about how he played the Annie. It kind of seems to be his fallback. It seems to be his fallback pick, kind of the safe one to take in just about anything, just because of the team fight capabilities that it brings. But what I was really, really impressed with, and I'm sure you were too, Hiccup, was the Fizz game. So not only did he absolutely pop off on this pick, there's one ult in particular that I can think about kind of going into the later stage of the game where he hit like 2 members with the fish and then just went straight in and executed multiple members of Oblivion. But he blind picked Fizz. Like, that takes like a lot of I guess confidence to just like throw out that pick, throw out the Fizz. And I think that it speaks to the fact that he kind of said like, hey, I'm willing to take this because I know how much focus in game 1 went to the top lane, and I know how much focus will continue to go into the top lane, kind of playing around the friendly competition that's going on and all that banter and everything, knowing that El Matador, the jungler from Oblivion, he's probably going to be up there, for most of this game trying to get this win for his top laner, especially since in the first game PGO did snowball really strongly off the top lane. And so, it allowed the Fizz pick to kind of just like sit there more quietly in the early game when the Fizz is a little bit weaker, pick up those levels, pick up the early items for himself, and then just take control of the game. Even towards the end, he was kind of like memeing a little bit, Whole Grain Man, like kind of going for some picks that it's like, he's going to die, but just go for it anyways, just because it becomes so oppressive to play against a pick like that. When if the fish hit someone, they're going to die from Oblivion Esports. So I really did like his really aggressive play. I mean, I would also, give a strong shout out to Huffzone. Obviously, that's kind of the obvious one when you're looking at this matchup, just because of like everything we saw going into this matchup. But I think, as I touched on earlier, it takes a special kind of player to be able to rise to the occasion of that banter. I think it's really easy to crumble, especially when there's mistakes, especially when there's early pressure, because, we already talked about how Oblivion, they did put up a really good fight early in the game, both games, but especially in game 1. And actually, Huffzone was put behind in that first game behind Mr. Turk on the set, and then was able to step up. And not only that, I thought it was really funny because in the Twitch chat during the game 2 draft, literally Huffzone said, I am going to pick Camille. If you don't ban it, you don't have anything to pick against it. So he's like advertising his pick in the chat, giving them a chance. And Mr. Turk threw down with the Jax. It just did not end up working at all. The Jax ended up picking up a couple kills later in the game because of just sloppy play from PGO, but yeah, I mean, so I would agree with Whole Grain Man, and then I would give the secondary shout out to Huff Zone.
I do feel that. I definitely think that it is a special kind of character to be able to step up to those occasions, especially. I do remember one play specifically where he tried to grab onto the wall, didn't, and missed the wall, and then died. Just wanted to bring that up because it was kind of the
It happens.
everyone's watching
Yeah.
kind of thing. No, I really enjoyed watching that series. I really enjoyed that the first picks that came out was the Camille versus the Set, because we're taking, I believe it was anyways, because we're taking their two like best players, the one that we, or not players but champions that we saw on clip. Mr. Turk beat up a Nocturne as Set, and then turn around, and then now we have Camille, which was on Huffzone's stream where he popped off. So you're taking those two, then you put them into the fight next to each other, and then you put Mr. Turk ahead in the early game, but then later on, the Camille pops off. So it was a really good fight to see. It was a really good series. I definitely think that if anything, PGO's early game needs a little bit more work, but that's just based off of what we saw. And then you could arguably say that Oblivion's late game needs work. So, but going into that, so that Whole Grain Man and Depperpine is Brankel's man of the hour.
I just liked how, obviously stat lines are stat lines, but just I felt like he was in total control of that series.
Yeah, and that makes total sense. Now, if we could have watched the series, I would feel a little bit more confident. So if you guys do have the VODs, please send them our way. We'll be able to take a look at those and then clip some of those and even cast some of those. So if you guys do get VODs, please send them our way. With that being said, let's recap the rest of the games. Collective 2-0 victory versus Goldfish. Lost Chapter 2-0 victory versus Heartless, which we already touched on. Limitless versus Arcanus. Arcanus forfeit, so there's 2-0 victory there. Lemon Citrus and Coin Flip, which I know was contentious because I did say that it was going to be a 2-1 coin flip. But unfortunately for Coin Flip, they are eliminated, and Lemon Citrus did take that in a very close, from what it looks like based on stats, very close series. So what do you guys think about those?
Well, I did want to touch on the collective 2-0ing of Goldfish, and I think it's kind of one that's easy to overlook because, Goldfish, they're definitely on the lower half. I don't think that they have a very good chance. I think there is a statistical chance of them making playoffs, not very high, that being said. But I do think that this was a really important matchup for collective effort, actually, because with Arcanus dropping from the league, collective effort, they're done after that last week. They get the 2-0 forfeit in this week. So this was their week 8 was really the last matchup that they had. And if we look back to week 7, collective effort, they suffered their first loss against PGO. And I touched on it on the analyst desk too, but going into the playoffs, you want to make especially with that bye, you want to make sure that you end on a high note, because if collective had a kind of a closer series here, or if they had lost to the Goldfish, they would have had 2 consecutive losses, then an FF, and then a bye. It just doesn't really bode well for your momentum moving into the playoffs. And I think even sometimes these losses, collective, they only had 1 loss on the season, but sometimes that can even make it a bigger impact, right? Mm-hmm. You suffer this loss to PGO, and maybe all of a sudden kind of your game plans and your confidence just starts to drop. But being able to just take this from what it looks like really decisive 2-0 against Goldfish, it does rise them back up a little bit. Just say like, hey, we are the team we are. We suffered this little stumble in the road against PGO, but that's okay. It just gives us more to learn from, going into the playoffs. And now we get to sit back for the bye week and just watch and wait. So that's the one that was important for me.
Yeah.
I honestly felt that Lemon Citrus, obviously, kind of like our lower teams in the league, but I felt like it was very important for Lemon Citrus to have their feelings of, hey, let's get ready for a potential playoff push. Sex Goddess really stepped up with the Aphelios in game 1. 13 kills, 4 deaths, 5 assists. If you're going to be an upset team, in historically when it comes to upsets, a lot of times it's always like you have a really good, talented player and everyone steps around and supports them. We saw that in Worlds 2016 with like Albus Nox Luna. We've seen teams that pull off upsets. And I feel like if Lemon Citrus wants to have a shot of being like that upset-minded team, they're going to have to play like this where it's going to be gritty. It's going to be close. I mean, game 1 was what, 25-26 in kills? It's going to be these long, drawn-out games of, it's literally a coin flip on who wins. And I feel like if Lemon Citrus wants a shot in the playoffs, they're going to have to play like that. Unfortunately, though, in best of fives, normally the better team wins. That, if you're going to pull off an upset, you're going to have to probably win game 1.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think. Oh, sorry.
No, you're good. You're good.
I was just gonna say, I know there was a lot of banter in the trash talk section after this matchup between Lemon Citrus, excuse me, and Coin Flip, and I know that it sounds like the Coin Flip jungler even was completely disconnected in one of the 2 games. So though it was a 2-0, Hiccup already kind of alluded to it, but it was close. So it was probably about as close as a 2-0 could get, especially considering that one of the games was just like a 4v5. But with that being said, I mean, we still have to talk about how Lemon Citrus, like their ability to surge through the second half of this season has been pretty remarkable. And, it's something that you love to see, a team that, has some issues out of the, gate or whatever, and then they're able to come together. Clearly, they've been able to enhance their communication and their team play, and they have gotten to this point now where they're probably a favorite to be able to make it into the playoffs. Now, will they be able to beat one of the other playoff teams? That's that's another story, and I'm not sure that I would favor them against really any of the other teams in playoffs, especially some of the higher seeds. But even just what they've been able to do building on their strengths, I think that if you're Lemon Citrus, making the playoffs, I mean, it's just not something that you would have even thought possible earlier in the season. So they've got to be giving themselves a pat on the back for just their ability to come from behind this season.
Yeah, and I agree with that. I think this game coming up this week between Limitless and Lemons is going to be huge. It's definitely a huge game for both teams, both sitting at the bottom of the cutoff. It's a lot bigger, I would say, for Lemon. I guess it's about the same. I mean, realistically speaking. And then you got to look at Goldfish is also sitting on the hot seat because they have to win against PGO, and that is going to be a battle in itself, especially with PGO looking as good as they've been looking. If Goldfish come into this, they might be able to put PGO on kind of their back foot. So if they do take that win, and that wouldn't look good for PGO, especially going into playoffs with a loss like that to a bottom standing team currently. With that being said, playoffs, there's a lot that can happen. And when we get there, that's when we'll find out what will happen, especially since there are best of fives that need to be played, and it's going to be a big thing. So going into that, how are we looking this week for our basically playoff seats, and then trying to get to playoffs? Like, how are we looking for this week's games? What do you guys think? The first one that we can touch on is the Goldfish Gaming and Predictive Gaming. What do you guys think?
Well, I know that for Goldfish, this is going to be a really tough matchup, and we already talked about how much of a surge PGO is on, and I think for them to be able to just smash this matchup again and kind of go into the playoffs with that huge amount of rolling momentum, having beaten Collective Effort, having, taken a couple of series in a row, that's going to be big for them. So I don't think we're going to see PGO, PGO, they've locked their playoff spot. But they would, first of all, I think they would like to get that bye if possible. I believe that Lost Chapter does have to lose in order for them to grab that, I believe. So they're not in control of their own destiny in terms of that, but they would like to be surging. They would like to, come in on that high note. For the Goldfish, this is a must-win game for them, and I think it's just going to be how much do they believe in themselves and how seriously are they going to take this matchup. I'm not really sure. I definitely would predict Predictive Gaming Odin to take it 2-0. But it's going to depend on whether how much Goldfish is able to bring. Goldfish, we know they're really good at taking teams to 3 games, so maybe there's a chance they win one, but I'm not gonna go for it this time.
I'm predicting a 2-0 sweep by PGO. The only way Goldfish, I think, wins in this series at all is if Huff Zone falls asleep, One Gray Man disconnects, and if Charizard decides to throw his laptop out the window or computer. I don't see Goldfish having a realistic shot.
Mm.
And actually a point that Elsa made that I think that is prevalent is do they take this serious? When you're a team that has been having struggles, that has had some hard times throughout the season, do you feel as though it starts to get in your head. Can we win this? Do we have a shot at winning this? And as you said, they've had a lot of series that they go to 3, but I mean, I can only imagine what's going through their minds when they line up against PGO and they're like, all right, what shots do we have? That's just how I feel is what's going on in their head.
Well, if they go into the fight definitely like that, I do think that they'll definitely take a 0-2 to PGO, and PGO will take that series. Granted, I do think it will, in my opinion, be a 2-1, because we all know how much Huff Zone likes to play. He said it before. He likes to play the 3 games. So maybe game 1 they take it. Game 2 they fiddle around a little bit, try to get something going that they've been testing maybe. And then that ends up being 2-1. The only reason I say that is because he said on the analyst desk that he likes it to go to 3 games. Now, if Elsa wants to go to sleep, or something like that, then we have to get a 2-0. Thanks, Elsa.
Is this the match is this match being streamed this week?
This match is not being streamed this week.
Oh,
so
man.
so it.
No. All right.
It,
well, since we're not going to be able to watch it, Huff Zone, if you're listening or if you're watching, here's a challenge that I set out to you. I want to see you pull out the Teemo pick. I just want to see it.
Oh man.
Maybe game 2 if you win game 1. I just want to see it. I just want to see someone just try Teemo out in one of these games. I just want to see it.
You're gonna get one of his merch things into your inbox here soon. Oh boy. Okay, well let's move on to the next game. This is a big one. Lost Chapter versus Oblivion. Lost Chapter need this in order to get their playoff bye, and Oblivion need this in order to stay alive. So this is a huge game, another huge game that both teams honestly need. Looking at this, especially after Lost Chapter's coming off of forfeiting last week, if I'm not mistaken, or was it the week before? I mean, sorry,
I think. The week before. Yeah, that was the week before.
It was the week before. Yeah, because last week they didn't end up playing. That's right. So my mistake. But it still would look really good for them to win this game. Remind everybody why they're on top. With collective effort and take that bye spot away from Predictive Gaming.
Yeah. So this is the one that's going to be going on tonight. Hopefully we're going to have it on the stream. And I think that Oblivion Esports, I mean, this is do or die for them right now. They need a win and in order to secure themselves into the playoffs. So I'm going to be really looking towards Oblivion to be able to take at least one game in this series. I'm trying to remember. I think that there is some significance to that. Yeah, so if Oblivion loses but they still are able to take a game, they need then if PGO wins and Limitless Future wins, then they still have a road to go into playoffs. Sorry, a lot of that's complicated. I'm not very good at that. But so it's very important for them to take at least one game in this series. And obviously Lost Chapter comes in as the heavy favorites, but I'm gonna say 2-1 for Lost Chapter. I still think Lost Chapter is gonna take it, but I believe in Oblivion to be able to just pull out one of the games, just give it everything they've got. And I think that this shows a lot of a team. We already talked about stepping up to the plate. Will Oblivion Esports be able to, throw it all out there when everything's on the line? I'm not sure, but I'm going to bet on them to at least do it in one game.
Elsa, you obviously have been watching these games, and how important is it, though, this jungle matchup between Sultan and Gregorio?
So I think that Gregorio is Gregorio is by far the best jungler in this league. So I think it's a really it's going to be a really tough matchup. I know that there's been like some switch up with like the lineup for Oblivion and stuff. Last week they didn't even say who they were going to be fielding until like at the game time.
Yeah.
But whoever they field, they have to be up for, a really big challenge because Gregorio is just so good. And so I'm really going to be looking in the champion select for this. I would like Oblivion to pinch the champion pool of Gregorio. We've seen teams give him specifically the Diana over and over again, and his Diana is just so freaking good. Like this guy, it just takes over the entire game. Another one is the Trundle. Gregorio, again, so good at the Trundle. So kind of these champions that have this early jungle priority and then can just snowball off of it. Maybe even the Jarvan as well. I know that a lot of teams we've seen that prioritize. So either doing a lot of banning out of those champions by Oblivion, or first picking themselves something that they know that their jungler can succeed on. And I think, El Matador has been their jungler for most of the season. Matador, he did have, like last week when we saw Oblivion, he had that early pressure. He was playing the Jarvan a lot of the time, and just being able to get up into that top lane, get those early kills, I think that's going to be absolutely critical against Lost Chapter.
I think going off of what you were saying with your analysis there, I do believe Lost Chapter does get a 2-0 sweep, but I feel like Game 2 is going to be close. I feel like Game 1 is going to be a stomp, and I think that, Gregorio is going to, pop off probably on J4. But I have a feeling, though, in Game 2, Oblivion Esports is going to start to finally feel the pressure. I feel like they're starting to going to feel, oh, this is do or die. They're going to feel that we need this.
Mm-hmm.
And then that's where I feel Lost Chapter's chemistry that we talked about earlier in the show. I feel like that's what's going to finally click in and win the series. But I feel like Oblivion's going to finally feel the heat in Game 2.
I agree with Elsa. I think it's a 2-1 here. I do think that Lost Chapter is going to give up one game because this is a little bit of a, I don't know, serious game. It's going to be an extremely serious game for both teams. And Oblivion wants it. They want it. They need it. And so I think they're going to fight for it. So it's going to be really close. We're going to skip the next one because the next one's Arcanist and Collective, and that's GG.
That's an easy predictive 2-0. Right?
Yeah. Easy. Okay, so moving on. So Heart and Soul versus Coin Flip Gaming. Coin Flip has flipped their roster. So it'll be kind of interesting to see what happens. At this next game for Heart and Soul, they need this win for playoffs. They get this win, they make playoffs. So this is huge for them. And Coin Flip, if they want to bring someone down with them and their sinking ship, then or sunk ship rather, because they're eliminated. If they want to bring someone down, they can bring Heart and Soul down now.
Go for it, Brankles.
Looking at with this whole match, wouldn't it be something if Coin Flip Gaming changes their roster and upset Heart and Soul, who, earlier in the season we were saying Heart and Soul was, not like, Lost Chapter and Collective Effort, but they were winning games. They had some good moments. But man, wouldn't it be something if they just had a free fall? Just a complete free fall from the top of just it would make some of those players probably just how much is it that they're already tilted based off of what happened 2 weeks ago and then last week and now heading into this week. If you lose to Coin Flip Gaming, might as well just change your summoner name, just it just feels as though they are on a rough patch as a team. Instead of this whole finding synergy with the jungle and mid lane, it's like, oh man, the mid laner jived in. I'm just going to go back to, taking my camps. Mm-hmm. I don't feel as though the team is clicking on all cylinders at all. It's like it's like you have a nice car, but one of the wheels is made of cardboard. It just doesn't feel like it's working.
Yeah, so for me, like Heart and Soul are being like given a gift this week going against Coin Flip. First of all, by the schedule, because obviously we've seen that Coin Flip has been one of the bottom teams, but also, as Hiccup already alluded to, Coin Flip like dumped the entirety of their starting roster. I think mostly as a meme, but in favor of letting all their substitutes have a chance to play this week. And I think that for Heart and Soul, this is your chance to, get the wheels back on the track before playoff starts because, as was stated, I was fully a part of kind of this Heart and Soul bandwagon after they were able to take like the 2-0 against PGO. This was after they had gotten rid of Lord Nick. They had a do instead as their jungler, and they came out against PGO. They had one really close game, and then they just crushed them in the second one. And after I saw that, I thought, well, Heart and Soul, they're kind of the team to beat. Like, they play as a full squad really, really well. And so we haven't been able to see their games streamed for the last couple of weeks after that. But, they have been crumbling. They have straight up, struggled. Oblivion was able to beat them in a 2-0. And then, they lost again before that, I believe. And so that's been really, really, really tricky for them. So I think that, again, this is a gift. If you are Heart and Soul, you want to win this 2-0 so badly. Like, you are being handed on a silver platter your way to the playoffs. And I think that what the key for Heart and Soul is going to be is just play your game. It doesn't matter if CFG, Coin Flip is memeing, whatever. If they pick these random things, you need to stick to your normal drafts. You need to do what's been tried and true, and you can't play down to the level of your opponents. Because I worry that that's been what has been happening to Heart and Soul when they've been going against some of these lower teams. They've been playing down to them, whereas when they're against a PGO, they're able to step up to the plate and beat them. You just need to play your game if you're Heart and Soul. Hopefully that they have some kind of coach or just some kind of team atmosphere where they can take a step back and look at the overall picture and see that that's what they need to do. I believe that they will. So I'm gonna go ahead and predict a 2-0 for Heart and Soul, but with a lot of worry in my heart that they might play down in one of these games and end up dropping one to Coin Flip Gaming, or that Coin Flip, sometimes you pull out something really, really weird, and it's really difficult for the other team to deal with legitimately. So I fear that Coin Flip might be able to take again, but I'll go 2-0. I'm going to believe with all my heart and soul that Team Ambition is going to win. I know that one's been
Elsa gets the cringy one.
Kind of been drugged through several times here, but I'm going to pull it out because it's my first time.
Yes, that's awesome. I totally agree with you. Just touching on mine, I think Heart and Soul really, really need this. This is a huge, I guess, push for them to try to get to the playoffs. And honestly, if they even drop a game, I think that's going to be a mental boom. I really don't want them to play at that lower level. They need to play like this is a serious match. Because it is an extremely serious match, and you need to throw everything you have at Coin Flip and make sure it's a 2-0, because when you go into playoffs, I don't know if you're trying to sandbag, but you're looking a little rough right now.
If I'm Heart and Soul, I take the playbook that we've been running the past 3 weeks. I burn that sucker, find a barrel, burn it up, take all your mouse, your keyboards, everything, just burn that, buy new stuff, clean slate. Just do a clean slate.
Aaron's...
know what? In fact, I just do it into a different room. Don't even play in the same room that you've been playing this past 3 weeks. Just go into a different room. I don't care if you have a family member in the same living room with you. Just do it. You gotta do something different, because it's like the definition of insanity: doing the same thing over and over again and expecting a different result.
Yeah, Brankles, I think you're gonna be sent the bill if they end up doing that. But that's that's on you. All right. It was your idea. No, but finishing it up, let's talk about Lemon Citrus versus Limitless Future. This is a very extremely important game. This will be streamed tomorrow, I believe. So that's going to be an extremely important game to watch. Everybody definitely tune in for that game. Personally, this was probably the hardest one for me to predict. Absolutely hardest one for me to predict. I am going to go with Limitless Future with a 2-1. I do think this will go the distance. I do think it'll be a game 3 type of game. but I think it's going to be extremely close. I think game one is probably going to go handily in someone's favor, but game two it's going to be close. Go to the other team, whether it's Lemon Citrus or Limitless Future, and then I think game three is just going to be who analyzed the game the best. It's going to be really, really close, and I'm really excited to see it. But like I said, 2-1 Limitless for sure.
Yeah, I absolutely agree that I think it would be really hard for me to not say that this is going to be a 2-1 either way. These are teams that we both kind of seen them go up and down throughout the season. Lemons, as I talked about earlier, obviously started off lower and now they've been surging. But we have to keep in mind, like they had an FF victory against Lost Chapter. They had that close 2-0 victory where they even were against an AFK against Coin Flip. Limitless Future, they've kind of just been up and down throughout the entire season. But I want to go back to something that Huffzone said when he was on the analyst desk last week, which is that as a player going against Limitless Future, he talked about how they were a really hard team to kind of predict what they're going to do. They brought out a lot of different strategies throughout the different weeks. And on top of that, they play very well individually in their lanes. I know that their bottom lane, like with Snow Life and Omnific, just like really, really strong. And I think that with that, I think that Limitless Future will be able to pull through. But I think it's going to be a 2-1. It's going to be really, really close. Like both of these teams on the edge of the playoffs. So similar to what I was talking about with Oblivion before, they're going to be throwing everything out there. They're going to be giving it everything they got. If there's any last draft, any weird picks that you've been saving, now is the time to pull them out. There's no tomorrow. If you lose this, it's very, very unlikely that you're going to make it. So I'm really excited for that because it's just going to be, everything that these teams have, throwing it out there and seeing who's best.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, we didn't get a chance to see Limitless last week because of the 2-0 forfeit. I know that we were talking a lot about with Lemon Citrus being, hey, they have a chance at making playoffs. I feel like Limitless, this is going to be a statement series for them. I think it's going to be a 2-0 sweep. And I think this is a game where we finally start to see some of the stuff that they've been working on pay off. I mean, 2 weeks ago, we watched Snow Life play Amumu to perfection. We saw Omnific play the Tristana and other picks to perfection in terms of the chemistry that we saw in the bot lane. Even though Sex Goddess had a really good week last week, how much is it going to be that synergy of those two against Sex Goddess? And I know, people are going to say, well, hey, he also has the support. But knowing what we saw out of Snow Life, he went from playing the tank Amumu 2 weeks ago to playing the pseudo carry Xerath and was phenomenal. And I feel like I feel like Limitless, what we're going to see out of them is I feel like we're going to see a new version of them heading into this series. I feel like they're going to start to click on having obviously, top through mid. Obviously, they're going to probably play a little bit more defensively. Obviously they have some of those picks that they can go with, like Myth Jones going, he needs to stay away from J4. I remember that. He needs to stay away from J4. But I feel like if you play through your bot lane, I honestly believe Limitless Future is going to win this 2-0.
Yeah, and you can even argue that looking at the last week's game, Lemon Citrus versus Coin Flip, that was close, and Coin Flip being a lower bracketed team that's eliminated, you were hoping for that to not be as close. That was very good predictions all around. But yeah, do you guys have anything else to close out the day?
Well, I did want to note that we are for sure going to be streaming tonight the matchup between Lost Chapter and Oblivion. So if you definitely tune in for that. It should be at 9:30 Eastern or 8:30 Central. So a little bit of a later start than the normal stream, but it's going to be a banger of a series, I hope. So tune in for me casting that along with my boss man Silver. So should be a fun one. But anyways, and I wanted to thank y'all for having me on.
Well, thank you so much.
Breakles, you got anything?
No, I'm just looking forward to watching somehow, seeing how these games play out and seeing the trash talk that happens in Discord.
All right. Well, excited series coming up tonight, and again another series coming tomorrow. Tune in for the analyst desk at, I believe it is 7 Eastern time, 6 Central. So
A
tune
little
in for
after
that.
7. Yep.
It's gonna be a banger of a series for both. Super excited. Elsa, thanks for joining us today on the CC Zone. We definitely appreciate having you, and we'll definitely have you again in the future. Yeah, so thanks everybody. Hope you enjoyed the cast, and please share your clips, your VODs, everything you have, and send it our way, because we will review it. We will look at it. We will add clips. We will try to get to you, and yeah, hope you guys take care and have a good one, and tune in tonight. Thanks.